So you want to be good at Pokemon. You want to be the guy on the big screen competing in high-level tournaments on Smogon, or being #1 on the ladder, or having your own YouTube channel and teaching people how to be good at Pokemon yourself. You want to be the star. You want to be like your favorite YouTuber. You want to play all tiers. You want to qualify for playoffs. You want to be bought on SPL. You want to have your name out there for yourself, and you want to be the very best, like no one ever was. You want to make plays. You want to know every tier like the back of your hand. You want to be the guy that people look out for and wait to play when a big tournament game is happening. You want people to look at your name on the forums and say, wow, who is that guy? Or have a price of 15K or 20K or 30K in SPL. Or you just want to be a good player because you want to be a good player and you like the game. Well, let's start with the basics. Part 1, Mentality. Before you even start playing, before you look at a team preview, before you have any idea about who your opponent is, what tour you're participating in, what game you're playing, you have to have your mental right. You have to know how that game is going to go before you even know what team you're facing. And this video is not going to just be me repeating, you have to have a good mentality. Well, what even is a good mentality? What, you have to be positive about everything? You have to brush off hacks without getting mad? You have to never get angry at the game? No, that's not a good mentality. That's just stuffing your feelings down your throat. The mentality you have to have when I'm talking about Pokemon is a mentality of openness, of creativity, of dynamics. You have to know how to play the game. And I know people, like maybe you expect this guide to be like EVs, basic things like that, but I'm not doing a guide like that. I'm doing a guide which will help you guys actually play this game better. I'm not giving you, bullshit tips and tricks. I've played this game at the highest level for, 9 years now. I've been playing this game, and I've been playing it at a very high level for a long time. And I've been in the amount of high-pressure situations I've been in, the amount of times my team has relied on me, the amount of games I've played in a tournament setting is incalculable at this point. It's probably in the thousands. Not just officials, just general tournaments. So when I talk about mentality, I'm talking about Pokemon as a game itself. The medium is the message, and the medium of Pokemon evokes a real fucking strong one. To be good at Pokemon, you have to be creative. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to play in many different tiers. You have to have a memory that's great. You have to have a skill set that's wide. You have to have both the idea of risk versus reward and the idea of playing safe. You have to know how to balance these things. Now in the background, I'm going to be playing a bunch of replays from tournament games that I have both won and lost to various effects, and I'm probably not going to be actively engaging with them. And I believe I've commentated over quite a few of these already. But this is with a critical distance. This is with me being away from the game. You can look at how I play. watch how I play. These are real tournament games and real high-pressure situations, and when I'm saying this, because this is going to be primarily a vocal video, maybe I'll put in some visuals later in the editing, but it's going to be primarily a vocal, audio-based video. When I'm saying this, keep in mind what's going on in screen, what I may have been thinking during these games. So to start off, I am going to talk about Pokemon and its creativity. Pokemon is a dynamic game. Pokemon is not a set-in-stone, linear game like, I don't know, Call of Duty or something which mechanics don't change. Or, well, mechanics do change, but what I mean by mechanics is I mean the fundamentals of the metagame, the stuff that's used, the most popular things are all influenceable. You're given a very wide set of things, and you have the option of manipulating them and coming up with new things, coming up with brand new things, with fresh ideas at the drop of a hat. You have the amount of creative power you have in Pokemon is probably close to that you have in maybe something like Melee when we're talking about play style. You may not be able to fundamentally alter your character, but you're certainly able to fundamentally change the way you play it. And to such a high degree that I'd say these two styles nearly mirror each other. So, when I'm talking about Pokemon, you have to be creative. Standard sets, standard builds, things that you see every single day on the ladder, it doesn't really translate to success in a competitive setting. You have to have fresh stuff. The standard is good because it's standard. Yeah, it'll win most games. And I've used some pretty standard stuff in my game too. And there's nothing wrong with abusing or using standard balance. Nothing at all. There is nothing wrong with using that stuff. But there is something wrong with only using that stuff and expecting yourself to go, to the heights. If you look at the top players, if you look at the best teams, the top players don't limit themselves to the ultra standard, to the, the exclusive. They build their own teams. And while I don't really build my own teams that much anymore, especially in older gens, when I did build them, I always made sure to have a certain philosophy when building them, a certain dynamic, a certain technique I would use when I was building these teams. My philosophy back in SPL 6, the year I went 8-3 in SPL, that year, which was one of my most dominant years. 8-3 record in SPL is pretty fucking good. That year, when I went 8-3, my philosophy was, in that current metagame, to have both an anti-metagame team, and to have a type, an archetype, a specific genre of team, which I could alter oh so slightly, and bend it to my will and be like, yeah, well, I want this slight change, because I thought the foundational dynamics of the team were solid. I thought that the team as a whole was pretty much as good as it could be. I believe that the balance cores I used back then were as good as anything I've ever used. Those are probably some of the best teams I've ever made, and I believe I influenced the metagame in a very, very good, not good, but I influenced it in a very interesting way with the introduction of Life Without Alakazam. When I talk about my influence on the metagame, when I talk about how I changed the metagame, I did it through creativity. When I talk about my most successful SPL, I realize that that was the SPL when I had the heart in it, when I had the creativity, when I was willing to take risks and was willing to build sets and teams which were different, which were dynamic, which introduced something new, which were fresh, which had all the pieces that mattered. I would build a balanced team which was standard, yeah, but there was always something interesting in it. SD Gliscor, maybe it was Dual Calm Mind, maybe it was an interesting set, maybe it was Earthquake Latios. I would always build teams that had at least something interesting in it. As boring as they looked, I remember I told Tokyo Tom, all you need is one simple edit to the formula, and you have a brand new team. You just have to make sure that formula isn't bad from the start. And you have to add a little something new. The second thing that I want to talk about is when I say the importance of being yourself in Pokemon, is you're going to want to develop a specific philosophy in play style, because when you start, you don't really think about your moves. You think about other people's moves, or you just click the super effective hit. Because you're trained, in the game that if you just do what's right, and if you just, click X, Y, and Z, you'll win every time. But competitive Pokemon, you're facing real opponents. You have to understand how the game is played. You have to understand the intrinsic value of every play you make. You have to understand all the options. And that's why Pokemon, the most important aspect is thinking. You have to understand, you have to think actively when you play this game. You have to know what you're going to do. And there are a million options, and you have to think through them, and you have to think through them very quickly and have to come with a conclusion of what the best play is. You have to be able to take risks. You have to be able to learn from others. You have to be able to be good at this game at a high level. Now, when I talk about learning the play, another important aspect is that you also need to learn from your mistakes. When I'm watching these replays right now, I realize that I was playing so ridiculously safe. And while I may have won this game, which is my first ever SPL game, over 3 years ago, I was playing this game so safe, it's honestly disgusting. I played this game with the only thing in mind was I didn't even want to win, I just wanted not to lose. I desperately did not want to lose, but winning was not on my mind. I just didn't want to lose. And that seems very strange, at the time, but I just wanted to win. And this was my SPL debut. This was it for me. If I lost this, I would probably have been embarrassed. I probably would have been benched week 1, and that would have just been it. I don't even know if I would have came back. So when you look at your old replays, or when you're watching other people play, when you're watching top tier players play, don't look at the spectacle. Don't look at the LOLs and the goats and the "you're a beast, you're the best ever." Don't look at that shit in the chat. What you should be doing is paying attention to how they're playing. Now, someone like me, I've already kind of peaked. I already know what the game is, and it's really up to me and my own peak, which I am well aware of, how to get better. I have to get better by my own right. I have to learn how to play. I have to relearn. I have to be better at that. Now that I've hit that peak, that's what I'm focusing on. But everyone else, newer players, which this video is targeted towards, you have to learn how to learn from other players. And when you're watching tournament games, ignore everything but dynamic. Why did BKC switch that way? Why did Ojama switch that way? Why did Megan predict that? What was his goal? Why was he like... You have to learn how to do that stuff. And that's hard. It's hard to realize the motive behind other players. It's not easy in the slightest. When you're looking at a game and when you're analyzing it to the highest level, recognize why these players are playing that way. They're not just randomly switching. And the thing with YouTube culture, which I, in a way, really dislike, is that it promotes almost mindless playing. Like, go for the most dynamic, the coolest fucking flashy play. But that's not how you play in a tournament setting, and I've seen that mirrored in players like Eternal Spirit. There's a running joke on the forums that Eternal Spirit essentially just chooses a Pokemon to sacrifice early game, every game, and then just runs with it. And to be perfectly honest, that's almost the truth, because he makes the most flashy, ridiculous plays. And I don't approve any of them, and usually nobody else approves of any of them. But he makes them. And in a way, it's very disappointing to watch what I think is an influence culture on just complete and utter fucking, flashiness influence a tournament setting. I feel like people haven't become more logically aggressive. I don't feel like people have become, that much better. Instead, what I feel has happened is players have adopted the style of playing for show on YouTube, which is entertaining in YouTube, clicking the most ballsy play. But in tournament settings, I mean, yeah, you have to have balls. You have to click the right move. You have to know what your opponent's thinking. You have to be the guy making the plays. You have to be making moves. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that you have to do that. But you have to do it with a thought in mind. And I feel that is a roadblock for a lot of newer players. People calling other people button clickers. This is what they mean by that. When people say you're a button clicker. I don't know why that music turned on there. But when people say you're a button clicker, that is what they mean. You're a player who just clicks the most random move and goes for show, even though logically it may not make any sense. There's a big difference from playing aggressive and playing like that. So really what it comes down to is look at how your opponent, or look at how these people are playing, the good players, and if you understand their plays in their games, you'll understand your plays in your games so much better. I advise almost exclusively looking at tournament replays for that, because Pokemon Showdown Lives are not a very good representation of how you should be playing in a tournament setting. Another thing is luck, and embracing that Pokemon is, in a lot of ways, a imperfect, luck-based game. Pokemon rewards idiots, to give a common quote from my man TDK. And he's not wrong. Pokemon does kind of reward idiots sometimes. But you have to learn to get over it. Play for hacks. Play for the win. Embrace that Pokemon is not a game 100% based on skill all the time. Skill is a heavy factor. You can't be really shit and win big tours. It just doesn't happen. There's so many roadblocks. But embrace the fact that, yes, this game is so ludicrously subjective and all over the place, and that you really do need to learn to understand the mentality of Pokemon. The mentality I'm talking about that I have, or that I at least had, was a defeatist mentality. If I lose once, then I'm garbage. I can never lose again. And when you think about losing all the time, and this goes for anything, but specifically for Pokemon, when your only objective is not to lose, you won't win. The games where I played the best were the games where I forgot that I could lose, were the games where I was focused on killing the other 6 Pokemon instead of my opponent killing my 6. The games where I would actually think about a game plan instead of how do I avoid this guy from killing me. The games where I had music playing and I would think, this is how I'm going to win this game. Or the games where I'm having fun, or the times where everyone's like, yeah, PDC, you can do it. Those were the games where I had the most fun, because those were the games where I were the most engaged. Look at ABR. ABR is probably the most shining example of this. ABR is a guy who embraces that Pokemon is about luck. This guy is, one, he's lucky as shit. Like, let's be honest, ABR is lucky as a motherfucker. But ABR doesn't care. That guy lucks the shit out of people, and he just doesn't care. He plays for the hacks. Ojama plays for the hacks. Ojama, I remember Blunder mentioning this, but Ojama's philosophy is play for the hacks. Build teams that are based around paralysis. Because not only does paralyzing opponent's Pokemon and playing for the luck-based factor in the game enhance your own chance of winning, so by a ludicrous amount, but it also decreases your own chance of getting lucked. Because, if you're the one paralyzing, you have more chances. You're reducing their ability to hit moves. When you're paralyzed, I mean, hell, if you're getting lucky, the opponent's mentality is going down. At least most often that's what happens. When people start getting luck, their mentality goes to shit. When people start getting angry, they stop paying attention to their nuances of the game. And they play worse, and they play worse, and they play worse, and they play worse. and they'll forget how to play the game, and they'll forget all their options, and they'll often throw it out the window. So when something happens in a game of Pokemon, you have to just be like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Because that is the actual truth of the game we play. And while I may not practice what I preach, while I may get really fucking mad when I get lucked, while your favorite, YouTuber may want to throw his computer out the window whenever something bad goes wrong, I am really going to ask you guys, please don't do that. Because although it is incredibly disappointing to lose a game to hacks, I've had to suffer from that, I can't even count how many times I have lost games, big tour games where playoffs were on the line, to bullshit luck, and there's nothing I can do about that. And it sucks, but it's part of the game we play, and unless you're like BKC, who levels up when he gets angry, more likely than not, you aren't going to benefit from getting mad at everything. I mean, when laddering, you have to get mad sometimes, because, you can't just bottle that shit up. It doesn't work that way, but for the most part, you have to realize the fundamentals. You have to realize how it's going, how things are happening, and focus on winning the game. Don't focus on, oh, I'm getting luck this game. Don't throw the game out the window just because you're getting hacks. I've done that. I've thrown games out the window because as soon as I get luck, I forget about winning. Don't do that. And the last tip I have about mentality, about the idea of embracing the game that we're playing, is immersing yourself in each metagame you play. Before you even think about playing it, watch other players play it. Not even, just watch. Build teams. Build teams in that metagame, because building teams, experimenting, being creative is the foundation of competitive Pokemon. And I don't do that much anymore, and maybe that's the reason why the top of my game, the reality was that the top of my game was probably, the top of my game was 2 years ago now, which is embarrassing to say that, I was the best, but now I am objectively not taking the route, which would be the best anymore. Of course it's embarrassing, but to be honest here, it is hard to constantly build, especially when you don't consider yourself that great of a builder. But you have to know the metagame inside and out, and you have to make teams that are fresh. You have to make teams that are creative. And that aspect of really learning the metagame from building in it is unmatched. Because while I'm at a skill level where I can play any metagame I'm in, to really be the best at it, like I consider myself probably one of the top 5 or SOU players, or Gen 6 players of all time. I have the best Smoke and Tour record in X and Y. I have the best SPL record in Gen 6. That's 100% true. I have easily the best SPL record. I think I'm like 14 and something. The reason why was because I still built my teams. Not all of them, but I still built teams. And that's really important to being good at the game. That's the key here. The key is to be immersed with yourself. You'll notice that a lot of players get worse as the time goes on because they stop building their teams. People like TDK build their teams. People like ABR build their teams. They don't have these major slumps that maybe I do. Or, even I'll use Blunder for this example, because I know Blunder had a less than satisfactory SPL. He's burnt out on the game. His mentality is bad. My mentality is bad. And those are things that we have talked at length about in chats. And they're things that need to be fixed. They're things that you can change, because while you may be able to you're never going to be able to change the matchup once it appears before you, unless you disconnect and then you resubmit teams because you're a lucky bastard. But the point is, you will never be able to change the matchup. You'll never be able to change the outcome of a game. But when you really put in effort, and when you really, really, really try and win, and when your mentality is right, and when you're focused on getting that win, well, the results can change. Thank you guys for watching. This was a more calm video. Up next, I plan for this to be a very long-running series. I don't know how many parts are in it. I couldn't tell you. There's a lot of things about Pokemon that I need to cover. But for now, I think I'm going to do Team Preview next, because we've covered the game before. And now, before you're actually playing. But now, we're going to cover the game when it's actually happening. Starting next time. Subscribe and peace out. Thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter, all that stuff. And I'll see you guys on the next one.